I'm Lisa Bradshaw. Thanks for joining the show today. I want to share with you a new discovery for me. Some of you may already be familiar. It's certainly not completely new to everyone, but it's completely new to me. And I always like to share the new finds with the audience. I was in search of a way to help cope with the stress I was feeling during the pandemic and the sheltering in and all the things that have changed in our world so quickly. And I discovered CBD, the non-THC variety. And I went in search of people who are knowledgeable, certainly more knowledgeable than me. And so I'm having Dr. Chandra Villano on the show today. She's going to break down what CBD is, how it works in our bodies, why it benefits us. And then I'll have a guest later in the show who will talk about her own personal experience and how much it's helped her young son. Thanks for being here, Chandra.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate who you are and what you're doing in the world. And this is a subject that is very passionate to me. So what CBD is that's actually an abbreviation for a big long word that says or gets said as cannabidiol. And it is what's called a phyto cannabinoid. Phyto refers to plant and cannabinoid refers to a compound that is made in the plant. And so it comes from industrial hemp. And when that is grown, this molecule is created in the plant. And when we use this in our bodies, it targets receptors that are part of something called our endocannabinoid system. More big words, we abbreviate that as the ECS. But our endocannabinoid system is made up of CB1 and CB2 receptors that are on our cells in every organ system of our body. And so this is a profound thing that has, been able to come to the market in healthcare just in the last year and a half. And a little bit of the back relevant history to that is that prior to 1937, we had this involved in our US history, and Thomas Jefferson was a grower, George Washington, John Adams were, very much advocates, and the industrial hemp plant is very high in nutrition, and we were using hemp flower and hemp seeds, and our livestock were eating hemp, and we were getting this high nutrition value from it in our food that when we were eating meat, in our dairy supply, in our eggs. And then in 1937, the government regulated, because industrial hemp comes from the cannabis plant, and based on how it's hybridized with male or female plants, it can be grown for marijuana or THC containing, or it can be grown for CBD. And our conversation today is the non-THC, as you mentioned. And so they couldn't recognize the plants well, and there was a lot of move towards big pharma starting to surge at that point. And so when this got regulated, the US wasn't able to grow it. So in the last year and a half, from December of 2018, the US Farm Bill has made CBD legal in the United States, and there has been an explosion of products. But what happened for these 83 years while we haven't had this nutrition for our body is that we have seen that China became the #1 producer of CBD in the world. And when those get cheaply extracted with solvents that can be toxic to our nervous system, there's concern about the safety. So I think it's a relative conversation.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was most concerned about when deciding to start using CBD is, how is it grown? How do we know it's safe? And looking for companies that had some, like the US Hemp Authority approval and those types of things. So in what I've learned so far from you and other resources is that the plant extracts whatever's in the soil. So whether it's good or bad, it's coming into the plant. So that's why growing it organically is so important. So explain to us how that works and how we can make sure we're safe if we're choosing to use CBD. How do you go about making sure you're choosing a safe variety?
Yeah, so what the plant does is soil remediation, meaning that as the roots go into the soil, it can pull up toxins, chemicals, and then what we're using from the plant is an oil or a resin. And as those get extracted, those toxins can come into the product that we're using, and we're thinking we're getting therapeutic benefit, and we may or may not, in addition to be getting toxicity. So we do want plants that are grown organically. And as you mentioned, the US Hemp Authority gives us a seed to shelf certification, knowing that the seeds didn't come from China. There are very strict demands on how the product is grown, how it's processed, so it's not processed with solvents. We also don't want it processed with heat. We are talking about delicate plant oils, and those can be what we call denatured or damaged in processing. And if we're using industrial hemp, we want to use a product that is considered full spectrum. And that means that all of the nutrition is going to be included. There are going to be 120 of those phytocannabinoids, and one of those is CBD. Another one is CBG. And CBG is a mother plant cell that basically, at about 6 weeks of growing time in the plant, based on how it's hybridized, it will either go into THC or CBD. It enhances the benefits of what CBD does, but there are also other vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, protein, terpenes, and even omega-3 fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory, really good for brain, skin, joint health. And so we want that nutrition, and we don't want to use products that are isolates or broad spectrum, because those aren't going to have the full nutritional profile for our body. If you're going to bother to pay, I want people to be, number one, getting full therapeutic benefit, and number two, not wasting their money. And very importantly,
that was the other thing, absorption, right? Because you don't know.
Yes.
When I was looking for a product, I was excited to find some that, replaced some of the multiple vitamins that I might be taking, A, B, C, E, omega-3s, like you mentioned, but also thinking about the absorption, because you can buy CBD oil in the gas station, at the gas station, anywhere. It's everywhere now. So making sure that the absorption is there, because I don't mind paying whatever it costs for that bottle that works and I know is being well absorbed, as opposed to paying a little less for something that's oil-based instead of water-soluble. So water-soluble versions of CBD are also best. Is that right?
Yes. What we know about the oils is, number one, they're kind of gross in your mouth, but number two is that they're only absorbed about 4 to 7%. So you're getting very little value for your money and for therapeutic benefit. And they are very slow acting, meaning they have to go through our digestion before the cannabinoids, the molecules that we want for benefit, get into our blood. And then they're metabolized out of our body in about 3 to 5 hours, where with water soluble, it's going to go in much faster and be more higher potency. And depending on the patent, if it's good or not, there's no labeling laws. So even if a company says it's water soluble, that might still not be of good value, which is where the U.S. Hemp Authority, certification comes in.
That was the other thing about the Hemp Authority. It has to be renewed yearly. Sometimes you can get something, some type of approval that you can stamp on your bottle, and then who knows how often it's regulated. But having that stamp means that every year you're compliant with the guidelines that are put forth.
Correct. Yep. And in 2020, the 2.0 version of that came out, and the stringent regulations on that have gotten even more. So anybody who's recertifying this year, if they've had it once, they have to meet that criteria to continue forward.
Well, let's take a break. I want to talk about the specific health benefits, and this is a lot of science. And I've said many times on the show, I'm not a science brain at all, but I'm learning, and I feel like you've been very helpful, and other things that I've read about, just kind of not dumbing it down, for lack of a better term, just simplifying things so that we can all understand it a bit better. I'd hate for anyone to miss out on it because the science is confusing. So let's take a break and then come back, and we'll talk in simpler terms of the aches and pains and the things that it can remedy for us, including stress. So we'll come back in just a moment with Chandra. We're back. We're talking with Dr. Chandra Villano. We were talking about CBD, the non-THC version. And in our first segment, we talked about the science. And I don't know about you, but I get lost in it sometimes. So we want to have a simpler conversation about the benefits of CBD in terms that we can hopefully all understand. Thank you so much for sharing both versions with us, Chandra. So let's talk about, in my own case, I was looking for, my doctor had actually recommended it to me a couple of years ago, or I'm sorry, a few months ago, and had said, a lot of people use it for stress and for pain. And so I thought, well, I needed to stress less. I was really feeling like so much of my life was being led in fear because of everything that's happened, and my background of being a cancer patient, and also seeing my late husband through his transplant. And so this whole don't touch things and don't get near people and wash your hands, that isn't new to me, but in this form, was just as stressful as the other times in my life, I think. So I was looking for a stress reliever. I had not expected that on day one of taking CBD and CBG that I would sleep better. And I was not expecting that 3 days into taking CBD and CBG, that the backache that I've suffered since I was 17 and had a fall, that acts up whenever it feels like it, especially if I sit too long, stand too long. You know, if I clean the house all in one day, I'm bending a lot, or whatever that is, that was gone on day 3. And I have not felt it since. And we're actually building a fence, and I kind of tweaked my back over the weekend, and I thought, oh, here we go. I felt it. And then an hour later, I forgot about it, and it hasn't hurt since. And that's something that would have set me back a couple of days at least. So the benefits are tenfold. I mean, I can't describe how much better I feel. Like this cloud is lifted. Do you hear that a lot?
Frequently, yes. People feel like fuzzy thinking is improved, their clarity, their focus, their attention, recall, cognition, all of that.
Their hope.
Yeah.
I feel like my hope is back, you know?
Yes.
And I'm an optimistic person. I'm a glass half full girl. And I just kind of woke up every day feeling like, is this our life now? And how do we get through this? And how do we make the best of it? So let's talk about, just in simple terms, why it works to get rid of our pain.
Well, what CBD does is it targets receptors that are in every organ system. And we know that how it works is through two cannabinoids that we already have in our body, but we don't make enough. And so we're all somewhat deficient. And when we get these compounds from the plant, what happens is it's actually like a supplement, and it is helping these receptors. And so we know that it can help pain from exertion, pain from exercise, overuse, pain from long-standing, chronic conditions. And in what it does is really drive something called homeostasis, which is kind of a balance or equilibrium in our body. And when we are more balanced and all the systems are communicating better, then our inflammation goes down. And when inflammation goes down, that's really a big driver. It's a function of the immune system that helps us have less pain. And so in the news, we're hearing about inflammation and cytokines and hormones and neurotransmitters. All those big words are just that literally a lot of it comes back to having balance in this system in our body. And so when people are sleeping better, the restorative properties that can happen at night help us better. When we are less stressed out and we feel more calm, cool, collected, then we have less stress hormones surging in our body, and then pain and inflammation do better. So a lot of it is about the whole body working better.
Yeah, I feel that because I feel like my appetite's reduced. I feel like my focus is better. I believe strongly in intermittent fasting, and it's helped me to do that more successfully. And it's also helped as I come off of the fast to not overeat or, get that feeling like, just the carbs or anything. Like my carb cravings are lower. There's just like this whole awakening for me that I wanted to share with the audience, because I think so many of us live in pain. So many of us are feeling stressed. So many of us are feeling losing sleep or having broken sleep. And to know that there's something that you can drop under your tongue to remedy that. I mean, obviously you got to check with your doctor, and if you're on any medications, you want to check with your doctor. I did that. I did a virtual call with my doctor ahead of time to make sure that this was something safe for me specifically. So definitely anyone who's interested in looking into CBD, do that first and foremost. But as you are a doctor with a naturopath practice, and just tell me like the top 3 things that you noticed the most, or most recently. You and I had talked about you had an insulin dependent patient who's doing better and requires less insulin. There's just different things that you encounter on a daily basis that I wouldn't, because I'm not a doctor.
Sure. So one of the main ones is tolerating stress. So people are feeling better with their mood, feeling better with feelings of anxiousness, panic, concern, worry, fear, all of that. That's kind of one whole area. Another area is really what we consider metabolic. So people are finding that this does work like a neurotransmitter, and it helps our appetite. It can help our relationship with feeling better, that we may do a little more exercise. If we're sleeping better, we've got that repair at night. And part of the functions of what we know in health studies is that this can help to do better with how people balance their insulin, how their blood sugars go. And so that can make it easier for someone who is, even type 1 or type 2 diabetic, people who are overweight. So there's big benefits to the cardiovascular system, to the blood pressure, and then in the pain realm, for the musculoskeletal system, people with neuropathy and nerve pain and joint pain and swelling, even with circulation, people feel like they have less edema. So I see a lot of different avenues, and something really exciting to me, in the stresses of the world, is there are even some studies that CBD is reducing substance abuse behavior. And specifically, 2 studies came out this year, reducing morphine dependence, reducing heroin-seeking behaviors. I feel like the health and the economic of those benefits are, just amazing. So there's so many areas because it addresses, all of our body systems.
And there's also a study I read, or a couple of studies I read, in how it helps veterans with PTSD in general,
Yes.
but more specific to veterans, just the study that I read.
Yeah, I have about 20 studies that are printed out just on PTSD, because those are people who can, I think, benefit the most from all of these different aspects in a natural way, with something that's not synthetic, that our body actually recognizes, and it's putting our system with these receptors that are inside back in balance, back into what we call homeostasis.
Well, I appreciate your time. I encourage anyone who's watching and considering looking into CBD to definitely, like I said, talk with your doctor, and also be in search of the organically grown, be in search of water soluble, be in search of hemp authority approved. Those are the main things. Water soluble, did I say that already?
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that you're getting a quality product, and pay attention to the price, of course, but know that it costs money to manufacture it in a wholesome, healthy, full spectrum way. So you get what you pay for, I think. That's what
Absolutely.
And if it replaces some of the medications you're taking, or replacing supplements that aren't absorbing as well in your body, then to me, that's worth every investment. I mean, that we tend to think about what we spend on certain things, but for our health, it's nothing to go to the pharmacy and pick up our medication, but if we could eliminate some of that, it benefits our body and our checkbook a little bit. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and thanks for your wealth of information. I really appreciate all you've done to help me understand it better, and hopefully the audience is understanding it better as well.
You are so welcome.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Sarah, and she's going to share her story about her son and the impact CBD has had on healing his spinal injury. We'll come back in just a moment. Thanks for being here, Sarah. I appreciate you joining the show.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking.
I learned of your story recently. I mean, you tell it better than I can, but you really were struggling after your son received spinal surgery, and you were worried about him becoming addicted to the pain meds, and he was having trouble sleeping. Tell us a little bit about his injury and the challenges you were facing.
Sure. So Dylan is, he's 18 years old now. This all began when he was 16. He had to have a major spine surgery where they had to put rods and screws from basically from the bottom of his neck all the way down to his butt. And at his 6-month post-op visit, we realized that something wasn't quite right, and it was infected, and we had to take it all out. 14-hour surgery to get everything out, and PICC line antibiotics for months and months and months. And then they said, okay, it's safe to put this back in. And he had 2 more spine surgeries within 5 days of each other. And they were both extremely long surgeries. And he was left after his last surgery in excruciating pain. He was on every kind of pain medication, narcotic that you could think of. And in fact, he was on 10 different pain medications when we came home from the hospital, and sleep aids. So, months were going by, and he was still requiring to take these heavy narcotics like Percocet and diazepam and Flexeril and gabapentin and an Ambien for sleep. And without these things, he couldn't make it through the night. It was horrible.
As his mother, I mean, it must have been very difficult for you to keep giving him this stuff that you knew ultimately was damaging.
It was awful, but without them, he was not able to just even relax, even to sleep for 1 hour. So it was like kind of like a double-edged sword. So we were just kind of trying to figure out a better alternative. And one day I'm in the medical field, and someone brought in this little bottle of CBD to our office. And this product, I mean, changed our lives. I stole it. My fiance is an orthopedic surgeon, and they left it there for him, but I stole it and took it home. And I just gave it to my son. I didn't even know if it was safe or if it wasn't, but at that point in our lives, we were just desperate for relief. And so I thought, you know what, I've heard the buzz about CBD, and I'm not sure if it's, placebo or if it's the real deal, or if it's snake oil, but it was worth a try. I was really willing to try anything at that point. So I gave him a dose, and the next morning he came out of his room by himself, which at that point he was still requiring me to lift him out of his bed and put him in his wheelchair just so he could get to the bathroom. And so when he came out of his room by himself, I was like, whoa, something's different here. And he was like, I could just see this look on his face. Like it was just like, kind of like he could take a deep breath. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, Mom, what was that stuff? I slept last night. And that was the moment I knew. And I thought, first of all, he maybe thinks this is pot. So maybe it's just a total placebo effect and he just thinks he wants more. I don't know. So I continued to give it to him for the next 5 days. And after day 5, he hadn't asked for a single pain medicine, not even a Tylenol. And he has not gone back to any of our narcotics since then. It's really changed our lives. His body was able to rest and repair itself. He could sleep through the night. So his body was finally healing. And he's really, it's changed our lives. It's changed my life because I can now relax. I'm not so stressed. My son's not hurting. And I mean, it's really just been such a godsend.
So when something like that happens in your family and you see those results, then did your whole family start using it, or was it just for him, or did you all find benefit?
Oh, absolutely. I have everybody on it, even our 2-year-old. I started taking it after I saw the major change in my son. I started reading up a lot more on it. And we did, I had my fiance really doing some research into it with me. And, there's so many other benefits to it. And I had so much stress and anxiety going through all that with my son. And so I started to take it, and it was like this elephant was lifted off my chest. Like I could breathe again, and, things weren't upsetting me or setting me off because I was on edge all the time. And so I became a better mom, and my kids were having, they were feeling great. They were sleeping better. Everyone takes it in my house. I mean, I have 4 kids. They all take it. I take it. Steve takes it. So yeah.
It's been a remarkable change for me. Through this pandemic and all the things I was sharing earlier, it's like this weight's been lifted, and every single thing that I see and read, it's not as difficult as it is in our country and in our world right now. It's not so doom and gloom for me. Like I can see hope in places that I couldn't see it before. And
right.
Nothing changed. I changed nothing except for starting to use CBD. And the non-THC version, which is what we're talking about during this episode. And it's life-changing. And when I heard your story, I wanted to share it with the audience because the validity of your fiance being in the medical field and you saying, hey, if it's snake oil, I don't care. I got to try something. And being a quality product that changed your life. So I really appreciate you sharing it, because people who are watching thinking, I can live with that pain I have, or this ache, or this stress, and they don't really have to. That's what I'm trying to convey. You don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had tried everything. I lined up all the bottles of medicine he was taking. I mean, the prescriptions and the over-the-counters that we were trying to work them all in together. And he doesn't take anything now. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't even take a Tylenol. So, I mean, it's really just been I love this snake oil.
You'll keep taking it forever. Well, thank you for your time, Sarah. Thank you for sharing your story. And I'm just so glad that your son's doing well and that you were able to see him through that. I think sometimes it's the mom in us that, we could save the world, right? But we want to be able to save our kid. And so you did that, and I'm happy for your family. So thanks for joining us and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you.